Well, hello, my fellow friends, my fellow neighbors, and my fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here, and our next trolley stop is now, and I am super excited for this one. Welcome back to another all-new episode of the Empowered Publicity Children's Book Spotlight Series. To be precise, we have reached episode number 114 here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series. My name is John Masiulionis, the manager here at Empowered Publicity. Thank you so much for spending some time with us wherever you are and wherever you may be. Summer Scoot is just around the corner. Now you might be wondering, John, what on earth is Summer Scoot? Well, I'll kind of elaborate on that throughout the course of our special trolley stop here today and this week. But yes, summer's just around the corner. And during this time of the year, as we're in the spring, we're looking forward to summer, many of us, we're trying new things, right? You know, whether it be starting a new job, whether it be we're learning a new trade, a skill, a craft, maybe you're writing your first children's book, right? Maybe you're illustrating your first children's book. Maybe you're becoming a parent for the first point in time, right? And so it's important to remember that everyone learns at their own pace and that everyone learns at their own speed, right? But above all else, it is so good, as we like to say, it's such a good feeling, thanks to our good friend and neighbor, Mr. Rogers, right? He would always say it's such a good feeling. It's a good feeling when you have a support system, right? Because there's times in life where we can feel lost and scared, alone, that no one may love or care for us, right? But again, when you have a support system, you realize that everything always works itself out. And it's always just good having wonderful neighbors along your path as well. And leave it to a brand new children's book to help all of us see the way, to help us remember the importance of having a support system. And that, yes, the old school cliche expression that practice makes perfect. The newest installment in the Woodland Friends series. It is now available courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Beaming Books, which, by the way, one of the best names for a children's book publishing company. I mean, you're excited, you're happy, you're glowing, you're beaming. Who doesn't want their book published by Beaming Books, right? But the newest installment in the Woodland Friends series, if you love the Woodland Friends series, you remember book 1, Porcupine's Pie. Well, the newest installment, Bear's Bicycle. It is now available again, courtesy of Beaming Books, making her return, her second appearance here on the Children's Book Spotlight Series. I believe that the trolley is going from San Diego to Virginia and Virginia back to San Diego. You, of course, know our featured guest who is joining us here this week also for the wonderful book that she published not that long ago, Fred's Big Feelings. If you missed our first trolley stop, Laura and myself, we do have the link to Laura's first appearance here on the program in the description below, in addition to Laura's official website and social media platforms and how you can purchase your copy of Bear's Bicycle. It is now available by heading on over to Amazon.com. While there, you can leave a 5-star review if you feel guided to do so, or you can purchase your copy again on Laura's official website, LauraRenauld.com. So again, the trolley goes from San Diego out to Virginia. Laura Renauld joining us here as our featured guest on episode number 114 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series. Laura, thank you so much for spending some time with us here today. How are things with you?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks so much for having me again, John. I really appreciate you bringing me back to talk about Bear's Bicycle today.
This is such a wonderful story, and it's got such an adorable character as the lead, but there's a cast of characters as well, because as we alluded to in the beginning of the program, Bear is not alone. Before we begin, of course, before we begin episode number 114 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, if this message is inspiring you, if it's bringing love and compassion into your heart, if you simply want to give a little virtual high five or a virtual hug to someone in your support system that you want to thank and give a little tip of the cap to as well, we encourage you to subscribe to Empowered Publicity's official YouTube channel and to share this very special trolley stop that you are now enjoying on your favorite social media platforms of choice. Laura, again, I'm excited to talk about this book. For those of our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors who are learning about your work for the first time, you love kids, you know, in your work as an elementary school teacher. Authors always have these wonderful backdrop stories on what inspired them to be a children's author. For those of our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors who are learning about your work for the first time, could you really share with us where really everything began for you as a children's author, and what, or whom I should say, whom inspired you to create this super adorable series?
Yeah, thank you. I was a teacher for a while in elementary school, and my favorite part of the day was sharing books with my students. I would look for books that would align with all the different curriculum areas. So we would read in science and social studies, and we would read, of course, during language arts, and they always inspired great conversations and really helped kids, see themselves in the story, which is so important for social emotional health and learning. And it really encouraged communication and conversations around topics, whether they were funny or difficult, or things that would encourage or amuse, and it was something that really struck me as I moved on in my life and became a mom and stepped out of the classroom into different types of teacherly jobs. I worked a little bit at a children's museum, and books were never far from my mind. So that's sort of how I got into working with children's writing, and picture books have always been my first love, because I just think that the marriage of art and text is such a unique unique art form that really stands out, and it's sort of like a child can take a walk, through a story or into a museum almost with it right there on their lap. So that's just a little bit of my background. As far as my books go, I got a chance to write Porcupine's Pie from a title that popped into my head when I was doing a brainstorming session for a literary challenge. And I was wondering what was behind that, what would that be, Porcupine's Pie? And so I started brainstorming, and Porcupine and her friends, Bear, Doe, and Squirrel, kind of came to my mind. And the first story is a fall story about a feast that they all have, and it really aligns with Thanksgiving, but it's called Fall Feast Day. And then the characters, didn't stop there. They kept speaking to me, and Bear and his bike, kind of set the stage for the next book. And it made sense to place it in a different season. So this is a summer story, as you alluded to earlier. Summer Scoot is the festival that they're trying to ride in and be accomplished in. And Bear is having a hard time because he's a bookworm, or a book bear, maybe I should say. And he wants to learn how to ride just by reading his favorite books, and he finds that to be kind of challenging. So, but as you mentioned, he has a support system. His friends encourage him and teach him that practicing and being persistent, persevering in the face of difficulties is the way to go.
There's something that's universal about the bicycle, right? Because we have the connection, whether it be if we're a parent or a caregiver, grandparent of a little one, we know what it's like to teach our little one to ride a bike for the first time. And then there's the training wheels, and eventually the training wheels come off, and they can fall every now and again, right? And that can be a little bit frustrating. I know one of the little ones that lives in my development here in San Diego, just a couple of days ago, I actually saw his father helping him learn to ride the bike for the first time. So it's perfect timing that we're talking about that. I'm curious to get your thoughts. What stands out to you about the bicycle, especially when it comes to learning about, practice and patience? Why do you feel that the bicycle is this universal message? And then based on that, why did you decide to incorporate that into the theme of the book, Bear's Bicycle? Because you could have picked, different things about practice and patience. So why the bicycle for Bear?
That's a great question. I think you're right that, bicycles are sort of a rite of passage of childhood. And it's one of the first things that a young child feels very accomplished and independent once they can ride on their own. It's sort of a metaphor a little bit for how they are starting to move away from their parents and being able to do things that are difficult and challenging and on their own. But you're right, you know, riding a bike and any other skill that you learn doesn't happen overnight, and it's requires some being able to take that obstacle or that scrape or that bruise and lift yourself back up and try again. And so having that image of a parent, you know, hovering beside or behind a child as they ride their bike is such a sweet image of a child going out into the world and the parent there to protect them or to encourage them as they learn and grow.
And I love the illustrations, by the way. Your illustrator has done such an amazing job. Jenny Poe, I want to make sure that I'm pronouncing her last name correct. This beautiful, they're very sweet, almost this sweetness. I've never really used that terminology describing illustrations, but there's this perfect blend. And I know that it really, like, I saw when Bear was falling off of his bicycle, and you know how, like, if you watch someone in slow motion, it's kind of like, whoa. It's like that's the visual that you're able to see with Bear. But he stayed the course. Before we talk more about Bear and his friends, could you talk to us about the wonderful synergy that you have with Jenny? Because again, you know, depending upon if an author is published, self-published, you're working with a larger publishing house kind of thing, right? Sometimes you have the super chummy relationship with your illustrator where you're on the phone every day and you're fine-tuning everything. And sometimes it's the publishing company has a series of illustrators and you have to trust the publishing company. They're going to pick the right one. So it's kind of like you're hoping that there's this synergy that's happening from afar to bring the message really to its heartfelt core. So could you share with us the experience of working with Jenny and how everything landed up coming out so beautifully as it did with Bear's Bicycle?
I have the experience of having the editor of my publishing company being the middleman. You know, I have never spoken to Jenny on my own. Occasionally I'll see her art and I can, you know, make notes on it from my side and then send it to my editor, and then the editor can share with her. So sometimes there's a little bit of collaboration in how I imagine the scene to go, or you know, or maybe she has a question with, you know, what did you think about this part? Because this is the way I'm illustrating it is not really working too well. Like, for example, in when Porcupine was first being developed, I had her in a shawl, and Jenny, I share this with kids in my school visits because it's such a humorous little sketch with a shawl on a porcupine, and I never thought that it would look so silly with all these quills poking through it. And so the editor and the illustrator both came back and said, you know, maybe Squirrel or maybe Porcupine needs a different accessory because the shawl doesn't really work in visual art, you know, the visual of it doesn't work. So I think, you know, there's things that as an author I don't think about visually. And then for the illustrator, sometimes, you know, Jenny has an amazing way of showing these characters and being able to put movement into, you know, as you mentioned, like you can see the movement in it, even though it's a still image. And I think, you know, there has to be that trust there that, you know, she's going to bring, you know, the story. I brought it 50% of the way with the text, and she's going to bring it the rest of the way with her art. And I've just been so pleased with our collaboration, even though it hasn't been, you know, I call her up on the phone and chat with her.
There are two really beautiful messages. And we're obviously going to talk about the whole support system thing, but in terms of when you're talking about learning something new for the first time, a new skill, a new craft, even if it's just perfecting your craft, there is practice and there's balance. Now, over the course of, you know, the past 14 months, however long this, you know, the whole pandemic COVID was, you know, kind of going on, it's very easy, I should say it was very easy to get frustrated, because let's say that you're wanting to do something and there is a delay, right? And there's really nothing you can do about that. You have to go with the flow. Let's say that, things are starting to get busier for a lot of people as things begin to open up a little bit more. The restrictions, are easing, which is great. You can end up having more on your plate, and that involves balance. And then again, just the importance of even being a children's author, right? This is now your third published book, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah.
Right. So when you were starting to write your first book, you're a little bit more tuned in, you're a little bit more experienced than what you were beforehand. So let's unpack these one at a time. Again, this could seem like the cliche expression, why does practice make perfect? But what is it about not even just practicing, but the art of practicing, to really not just necessarily go through the motions, but to just really begin to enjoy the experience that much more, and not necessarily just want to get to the final destination, right? Many of us, if we want to ride a bicycle, right, we just want to get to the bicycle, but we kind of miss the whole journey along the way. So why do you feel the art of practice is very important, especially right now for us as adults, as well as for our little ones?
Yeah, the art of practice. I really like that. That's a really interesting phrase. I think, when children learn, they learn through play, and their play is really practicing all the different things that they are learning, all the things that they are noticing around them, with whether it's social interactions or whether it's being in a play kitchen and practicing, making meals just like one of their parents, or in the case of a bicycle, being able to practice and make sure that you can have all your coordinated parts going so that you can stay on balance. But yeah, it's just as true for adults that practicing something makes us more, I think it helps us focus on what we want to pursue and make it a little bit something that we want to focus our attention on, I guess. And I think of my writing as play. It's the way my kids were asking me the other day, how come grown-ups don't play with their imagination like kids do? And I said, well, that's true that sometimes grown-ups don't do that as much, but maybe it just looks a little different. It's not, moving your stuffed animals around the room as you create a story. But I said, for me, I'm sitting at my desk and making up stories. And so I think it maybe changes a little bit as we get older, but maybe we don't want to admit it, but I think adults need that kind of play and practice time just as much.
It's interesting because I always get some wonderful ideas whenever we have our children's book spotlight series episode. And what was coming to mind about, we talked about the art of practice, and now we're talking about balance. And balance, even for the those ancient Buddhist teachers, right? Those people that practice their 5-hour-long meditations to start the morning, right? Even at some point, balance can be a little bit challenging for the best of us, so to speak. During the children's book spotlights, we always like to provide practical tools for parents, for educators, for grandparents, for heart-centered entrepreneurs. And I think this is something that you can really speak quite a bit about. Coming into greater balance. How can we come into that greater balance? How can we fine tune things where if we feel that we're out of balance a little bit, right? Let's say we're, from a perspective of maybe like we're riding the bicycle, but we're not riding the bicycle, and we're kind of like this, right? It's very easy to kind of be like this. What are some things that come to mind, whether it be, suggestions or practices? What are some things that you can share with our listeners and viewers and our friends and neighbors to help us come into a greater balance, especially right now?
I think, putting the things that are most important to you and what you're passionate about, closer to the front burner rather than putting them off. And I guess what I mean by that is, from my own personal life, my kids have been home doing virtual school for this whole past year, and they will continue that through June, through the end of the school year. And, so obviously they need my attention somewhat. I mean, they're very independent for the most part. They know what the routine is, but I do need to balance my family life with my writing life. But at the same time, I think it's important for them to understand that I do this work because it's important to me. I feel drawn to it. I feel passionate about it. And I feel that it reaches children, once the books are printed and it can be in their hands, these are things that are important. And so they know when I close my door, that now I'm working, and I'm balancing that time with the things that they need from me as well. So, but there are other things that I haven't done at all in the last year. And so because of that, those things I was able to push to the side because I decided those weren't the things I needed to focus my attention on right now. So, depending on how much time you have in your daily life to give to things that are for your own self or things that, lift you up, versus things that you need to do for others. I think finding that balance it can be challenging, but finding those few things that you really can't compromise on are the way to be able to sort of start at least. And you can always adjust it as you go. I think that's one of the great things about the images of Bear on his bicycle in this book is that he, decides after one try and one little fall that, he can't do it. And his friends show him otherwise, and that it's okay to make a change and to lean on your friends a little bit. I think that's another part of balance, is really being able to lean on your family and your friends and that support system you mentioned earlier, and being able to say, this is what I need right now, and but also being able to be that helper and be that someone that other people can lean on at different times as well.
Very much so. And to put a smile on your face, I know that, every once in a while I'll go back to one of my probably my favorite television show growing up, which is Full House. And there was the episode where Michelle was learning to ride the bicycle for the first time. And Joey, Uncle Joey, Dave Coulier, was holding Michelle as she was riding her bike, and then she fell. She went in the bushes, and she was upset at Uncle Joey. How could you let me fall? How could you let me fall? But by the time the episode completed, she was riding her bike, right? And it's just a matter of to acknowledge the fact that, and this is also important to share when it comes to balance, when it comes to practice, everything always has a way of working itself out, sometimes even better than what you can expect. So another thing that comes to mind is just the importance of holding that vision, right? I know obviously, for example, when you're a children's author, when you're an illustrator, it's very easy to get frustrated. Oh my gosh, this isn't turning out the way that I wanted, or, there's a delay in my book. And it's just holding that vision, because eventually when you hold the vision, you hold the children's book like I'm holding up right now. Again, we are very blessed to be joined by our featured guest here on episode number 114 of the Empowered Publicity Children's Book Spotlight Series, children's author Laura Renauld. We are sharing her brand new release, Bear's Bicycle, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Beaming Books, the next installment in the Woodland Friends series. It is now available. You can head on over to Laura's official website, laurarenauld.com. You can also head on over to amazon.com if that is your online vehicle of choice, your favorite online vehicle of choice. And when you leave a 5-star review, if you feel guided to do so, just remember that is one of the many ways that you can support Laura and the wonderful work that she is doing for children, parents, educators, those who love great children's books, like many of us, of course. It's just one of the many ways that you can support the great work that Laura is doing in the process. And while you're on Amazon, while you're on laurarenauld.com, purchase your copy of Fred's Big Feelings as well, too, because of course we also share the special affinity and the appreciation that we have with Mr. Rogers. I think that that's something to, of course, talk about, because just recently we lost Joanne Rogers, Fred's beloved, Fred's longtime wife. They had this storybook marriage, this storybook life. You know, things have obviously shifted and changed. There's been so much happening in the world over the course of, from when you last joined us on the Children's Book Spotlight series to now. There's times, and I'm sure during the pandemic, where you probably said, what would he do? What would he say, right? Not to necessarily say that that's the question, but why do you feel that the message of Mr. Rogers, even as things are getting better, even as things are getting back to a newer normal, which we probably still don't even really know what that means, right? But things are expanding. You know, we're starting to be, we're visiting more people, we're traveling more. Why is it essential? We've heard that term, essential workers, right? Why is it essential for us to embody in some capacity what Mr. Rogers was talking about for such a long period of time? Because again, we're doing our part. We don't necessarily need to be the next Mr. Rogers, but we can keep on sharing his messages of kindness and compassion and love and understanding. Why is that really essential? And maybe in many respects, what really is the key to help us get through officially to the other side of what we've been going through?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think about his, you know, his sign off, and all the time, you know, the giving this affirmation that you are unique, you are special, people can like you just the way you are. And I think about that all the time when I watch the news, and, you know, when I think about how we've been, you know, kind of stuck in the house for a long time. And it's just a really great reminder that, you know, we're all in this together, you know, and we're really, in a way, we are separated, but we're almost closer together because we are all experiencing this kind of crazy moment in history. We're living through this pandemic, and it reminds us that, you know, there are people going through very difficult times, you know, family tragedy, but also really emotional and social deprivation that is, you know, I've seen, you know, in my own kids, just from them not being in school. And it's just a reminder that you never quite know the challenges other people are facing. So it's important to be compassionate and patient and understanding, and just to keep ourselves kind of open, keep our hearts open to all of the people around us.
Agreed. And I think that this is where things come back full circle. We talked at the beginning of our time together today about the importance of a support system. And during these past 14 months, you know, there are many people, especially, you know, if one classifies themselves as a sensitive soul and an empath, sometimes people feel they can do everything on their own, and thus they're afraid to ask for help. Mm-hmm. And that's what a support system is there for. If you're just simply needing to, vent from a healthy perspective, not to necessarily emotionally dump on someone, right? But just to, you know, talk to someone, hey, how was your day? Hey, how was your day? That kind of thing. If you're taking the time to, like, I'm very blessed. When I moved cross country back in October from Buffalo to San Diego, there were many things that had to fall into place in order for me to be able to get out here. Because if you take a look at the last time that Laura joined us on the Children's Book Spotlight series, things look a little bit different, literally and figuratively, right? But I'm so blessed for the support system that I had then, the support system that I continue to have as of right now. What would be a message of encouragement that you would share for those who are tuning into episode number 114 of the Children's Book Spotlight series, who are afraid to ask for help, who think that they can just do everything on their own, right? To remind them that it's okay to have a support system. And if anything, when you have a support system, that things are more manageable, and maybe even to a certain extent, they're even that much more special along the way.
Yeah, I think that I think probably some of the biggest challenges are for people that have been, that live alone, or, don't have those connections, and are being told, you need to keep yourselves safe and separate, right? So I think the advice to have sort of a bubble of people that you can safely interact with has been useful from a health perspective, so that you can have those support networks. But it's been a challenge. It's certainly been a challenge for everyone, and I guess making sure that, if you're in a difficult spot, reaching out to your neighbor, or to your church, or your community center is a place that you can start, and to be able to acknowledge the fact that it's okay to ask for help, and things of that nature can be done safely still, even in this time. I know that in my community, we've seen people making deliveries for neighbors, or just putting there was I'm trying to remember what it was called. It was like a bear walk or something in our community. So there were people putting teddy bears up in the windows, just so that when families with young children could, go out for a walk, they would have something to look for. So, the small things like that can really reach out to other people, and help you build that community and build that support system when you need it, especially.
And also, there has been, I guess you could say, well, there's been many silver linings as the result of COVID and the pandemic. One is that, even though may feel that we have become further apart in terms of maybe not being able to spend as much physical time in the way in which we did before, we've had this virtual support system, right? So again, focusing on the silver linings, it's like we had that, and thanks to Zoom and Skype and Facebook and WhatsApp and all these wonderful digital hoo-has that we've been able to connect. Because just imagine if this would have happened in a time where there wasn't this sort of, technology and things along the lines of that. And then, of course, the two things that really come to mind as well with the silver linings during the pandemic is that children have been able to read more. Right? More children's books have been able to be written and created. And then also, I think this is the ultimate thing, is that parents have also been wanting to spend more time with their kids. Yeah. So again, that's just a support system in itself, being able to rely on your family. And again, if you feel that, there are some people that have friends and colleagues, and they're kind of like their immediate and their extended family, support systems also come in different forms. They can come with a bear and a porcupine and a doe, right? Or they can just come from, your cousin or your next door neighbor, or, a friend who owns a restaurant, right? There's just so many different ways that support systems can look like as well. We're beginning to wind down our time with our featured guest here on episode number 114 of the Empowered Publicity Children's Book Spotlight Series. Children's author Laura Renauld. We are sharing the next installment in the Woodland Friends series, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Beaming Books. Love the name of the publishing company, by the way, Beaming Books, little sunshine all around, right? Bear's Bicycle. It is now available. You can head on over to Laura's official website, laurarenauld.com. You can also head on over to amazon.com. And while there, if you feel guided to do so, you can leave your 5-star review for Bear's Bicycle, also for Porcupine's Pie, for Fred's Big Feelings. That's, again, one of the many ways that you can support Laura and all the amazing children's authors and illustrators who are doing such great things for children, parents, families, educators, and again, those who love great children's books. And we do want to mention one of our favorite children's picture books thus far in the first quarter of 2021. We know that many of you at Empowered Publicity have been watching the Children's Book Spotlight series. You saw what we kind of did at the end of last year, the top 5 children's books of 2020. Well, we're starting to keep track of that so that when the end of the year rolls around and we release that brand new release for 2021, well, there's Bicycle Beyond there. It's got a very good chance as of right now, but such a fantastic book as well. And we always like to talk about coming attractions. Now, movie theaters are actually opening up. In fact, just a couple of days ago, I actually saw the 20th anniversary of Shrek. There's this wonderful company called Fathom Events that brings back anniversary screenings of movies to the Regal Cinemas and the AMC. So I just saw the 20th anniversary of Shrek at a movie theater. Get that. So we've got coming attractions there, even though it was kind of a little bit of an older movie, but there is another installment in the Woodland Friends series. Of course, one of the characters in the series that I might have forgotten to mention is the Squirrel, and Squirrel's coming to the forefront. Squirrel's getting his own book in the fall called Squirrel's Sweater. Could you give us a little bit of a sneak peek at what our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors can expect when they enjoy the 3rd installment in the Woodland Friends series?
Sure. Squirrel's Sweater is a winter story. So now we've got fall, summer, and winter. And it starts out with Squirrel getting ready for winter. You know, all of her acorns are stored, and she's just trying to find her favorite sweater, and she tries to pull it on and gets it over her head and discovers that it is too small. She's very disappointed by this, and so she goes off in search of her friends, the rest of the characters, who help her try to make it, stretch it, try to add on to it, try to redecorate it to make it fitter again. But what we come to understand after it tragically gets pulled apart, that she is not so much sad about the fact that the sweater doesn't fit. It's that her granny made it for her. And she thought it would always fit. And so there's a little undertone of loss and a very light touch to the idea that things, you know, you need to be able to let go of certain things, but memories and love will always stay with you in your heart. And so Squirrel discovers that she can repurpose this sweater and make a memory out of it with a pillow, you know, make a memory pillow. And so, as with the other books, it ends with a craft, and it encourages kids to make their own memory pillow of something that would help them feel all warm and fuzzy about with either a relative or a friend. And so Squirrel learns that she can depend on her friends for emotional support, and that it's okay to grow and to move on, but not forget.
I love that. I'm already looking forward to the fall, but I'm going to enjoy Summer Scoot. I am enjoying Summer Scoot. When I think I mentioned in the Empowered Publicity Green Room, one of the things that I do every Friday is I read to the kids here in my development. I'm going to ask them, are they excited for Summer Scoot? They're probably not going to have any idea of what I'm talking about, right? But I mean, who doesn't want to have a great Summer Scoot, right? I mean, needless to say, we all do in the process. Of course, two of the ways that we put the beautiful bow on each Children's Book Spotlight series episode, we like to give a little bit of a tip of the cap to one of our favorite neighbors, Mr. Rogers, of course, the longtime host of the beloved children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And as you know, Laura, maybe better than anyone besides Matthew Cordell, who's been on the Children's Book Spotlight series before, he reminded us, and he always kept the time, whether it be, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, whatever it was. And he did this during times in the neighborhood. He did this as well during commencement speeches and talks that he did. Mr. Rogers reminded us of the importance of remembering those who helped love us into being. Mm-hmm. From the last time that you joined us here on the program to now, obviously it seems kind of like 10 lifetimes to a certain extent. Who would be some of the people that you would like to recognize along the way that have helped to love you into being over this time? Or even if you want to, someone's coming, let's say, someone from, your your youth or your college years, someone that you want to be able to share some sentimental comments about who have helped love you into being.
I love that you mentioned that. That's one of my favorite quotes of his, and I used that in my dedication for Fred's Big Feelings, and I dedicated it to my parents. Both my mom and dad loved me into being, and I've always had their support and encouragement all along the path. So I continue to think of them when I think of him, when I think of Mr. Rogers. But we've been talking a lot about support systems this episode, and so I would love to also say that, you know, my wonderful husband Andy and our two kids, our two boys Henry and Nathan, are, you know, we've grown as a family together this year. We've you know, laughed together, we've cried together, we've done all sorts of other, you know, outings where we can be outside and, you know, in the mountains, or, you know, just, you know, going for a hike or skipping stones, or, you know, looking for butterflies. And as you mentioned, it's silver linings. You know, we've really had a year where it wasn't quite how we might have chosen it, but we've been able to be together as a family and really grow closer, I think, because of that.
That's beautiful. And I think it's so important, because again, we could easily look back at the past 14 months and say, why did this happen? Or how come it's still ongoing? Or just different kinds of things. It's been a very frustrating time off and on for many of us, no matter what side of the aisle that we're on, no matter where we're at in our life, right? It's just a matter of appreciating people more. And I think that when we appreciate things and people more, we have more people that are helping us love us into being, right? And even the people that may cause us some frustration, they're in a certain way helping to love us into being as well too. And of course, you know, for guests who join us multiple times, of course, we have a little segment here on the Children's Book Spotlight series entitled 3 Wishes. And yes, you know, one of the things that did make it out from Buffalo out to San Diego was my good old trusty genie lamp, because of course, who doesn't want to have their children's book published by Beaming Books, and who doesn't want to have a genie lamp? Like, those are, if you can take 2 things from this Children's Book Spotlight series, right? Those will be 2 of the things. But we always like putting out wishes for those people, for people out in the world right now, people that are not, you know, you and I, so that, you know, when a guest comes on the first time, they always get the wishes, which is great. But it's starting to be such a really good feeling, pardon the cliche again, but when we're doing our part to put wishes out there for our fellow neighbors out there. So these wishes can be anything, Laura, because I think it's important for all of us to help those people, those neighbors that come across that come into our lives and on our path, to help them remember and to help them bring their dreams, their desires, their goals, their visions to life. So what would those 3 wishes that you'd like that you would like to share for our fellow neighbors out there, and even for the planet as well too?
I wish that as a country, we can move forward in a positive way to change the type of systematic, you know, racism and discrimination that have gone on for so long. And my heart breaks, you know, for the families of the victims in the Black Lives Matter, you know, movement protests that went on last summer and are still going on. So I've been thinking a lot about that, about Minneapolis and a lot of other places recently. So that's one big one, I guess.
Agreed.
I also wish for more movement on climate change and climate choices that we can make for the betterment, so our children have a planet and a healthy planet. And I also wish that certain medical cures can be found for things like cancer and Alzheimer's. Those hit close to home in my family, and it would be lovely to see those sorts of things not be so prevalent.
Those are beautiful wishes, and thank you very much for sharing those. Raise your hand if you had fun on episode number 114 of the Empowered Publicity Children's Book Spotlight Series. I'm raising one hand, and guess what? I'm raising two. We're all raising four hands here on the Children's Book Spotlight Series. Again, you can purchase your copy of Bear's Bicycle, such a delightful children's book to be able to start off the spring and to get ready for summer scoot, by the way. You can head on over to Laura's official website, laurarenauld.com. You can also head on over to amazon.com if that is your favorite online vehicle of choice, and you can purchase your copy from there. In addition to Porcupine's Pie, the first installment in the Woodland Friends series, or Fred's Big Feelings as well, too. You can just purchase them all if you feel guided to do so as well, too. But again, to leave a 5-star review if you feel guided to do so for Bear's Bicycles. Again, that is one of the many ways that you can support Laura, the wonderful work that she is doing for children's authors, for aspiring children's authors, for parents, for educators, and of course for our children all across the country and all around the world. There are many more trolley stops to go on the Children's Book Spotlight Series. We are looking forward to Summer Scoot literally is just around the corner. So of course, if you are a children's author, if you would like to be able to join the Empowered Publicity family and share your inspiring story and the release of your brand new children's book as a featured guest here on the Children's Book Spotlight Series, just like Laura did here this week, you can head on over to our official website at empoweredpublicity.com or connect with us via any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen. Facebook and Instagram at Empowered Publicity, Twitter at empowered_PR. We also, of course, want to give a little tip of the cap to one of Mr. Rogers' favorite neighbors. Of course, you remember him as Mr. McFeely on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but we love him here even more as David Newell. If you are a children's author and would like to have your brand new children's book be reviewed on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, which is where David and I, we review brand new heartfelt children's books from members of the Empowered Publicity family, their brand new children's books, and we deliver heartfelt children's book reviews from our favorite neighbors around the world. The March installment of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast is now available. The April installment of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast is now available. If you would like to have us review your brand new children's book as part of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, feel free to connect with us again via our official website and our social media platforms as well. And of course, we also want to give a little virtual hug as well to our friends and neighbors at CBS 8, the CW San Diego, for all of their continued hard work that they are doing for the Empowering Reads for Kids, which airs every other Wednesday on the CW San Diego, CBS 8 on San Diego Living, where myself and Laura Kavanaugh, the host and executive producer of San Diego Living, we dive into the pages of the newest heartfelt children's books from who, of course, we refer to as the shining stars in the kidlit community. If you would like to be able to have your brand new children's book be featured on the Empowering Reads for Kids, join the Empowered Publicity family in the process. You know how to connect with us. And if you would like to just learn more information on how we can be of service to you at Empowered Publicity, at PR from the Heart, as we are approaching our 7-year anniversary, you can head on over to our official website again at empoweredpublicity.com and schedule your courtesy discovery call and see how we can be of service to you. One final time, one of our favorite children's books thus far from 2021. It is the latest installment in the Woodland Friends series. It is Bear's Bicycle. You can head on over to laurarenauld.com. You can head on over to amazon.com. Enjoy this wonderful read. Purchase Porcupine's Pie, because again, that's book 1 and that's book 2. And just remember, again, that Squirrel sweater is just around the corner. The next installment is coming out in September. Laura, we look forward to reconnecting with you. The invitation is always open to hop back aboard the trolley. This trolley's free, which is great. It can go from, Virginia to San Diego. It doesn't even cost you. It's just like a little virtual token kind of thing. So we look forward to having you back on the program later this year.
Wonderful. I'd love to do that.
This is wonderful. And of course, we want to thank all of you, because without you, there's no us, so to speak, right? You guys are doing a great job supporting children's authors, supporting children's illustrators, supporting the love of children's books and of kidlit, which we love to do here on the Children's Book Spotlight series as well too. So we want to acknowledge that as well. As we hear the trolley, it is officially time to conclude episode number 114 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. But before we do, let us again remember our favorite neighbor, one of our favorite neighbors, Mr. Rogers. He reminded us for many years that we are perfect, we are whole, we are healthy, we are complete, that you are loved, you are special just the way that you are. Well, we like to have an important reminder of that in our own light too, because we say 2, 4, 3. And that means that we love you. There's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, and 3 letters in you. So since Laura was kind enough to join us and give us some of her time here this week, we like to remember that you are loved, you are whole, you are healthy, you are complete, that you are loved just the way that you are, that we like you just the way that you are. So this has been episode number 114 of the Empowered Publicity Children's Book Spotlight series. If this message has brought love, compassion, healing, understanding, if you are now ready for Summer Scoot, right? Raise your hand if you're ready for Summer Scoot once again, by the way. And if you feel that this message needs to be shared with someone in need, maybe someone who just needs a little pick-me-up, someone who is doing their part to practice the art of patience, to persevere during a little bit of a challenging time, and who maybe just needs to build up their support system. Show that you're a part of that particular person's support system in your life by sharing episode number 114 of the Children's Book Spotlight series on your favorite social media platforms of choice. So thank you for spending some time with us here as part of this very special trolley stop here this week. And above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world. So for Laura Renauld, for myself, John Masiulionis, and for all of you, our fellow friends, neighbors, and shining stars, have a wonderful day, have a blessed week, and we'll be back once again very soon with an all-new installment of the Children's Book Spotlight series, which will be episode number 115. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you again for helping us to walk home the children of the world.